Hello and welcome to this All Indians Matter in-depth limited series. I am Ashraf Engineer. Last year, as part of our annual Mahatma Gandhi series, we traced his early years. We started with his grandfather and father, Gandhi's mother Putliba, his childhood, going all the way till the boy from Porbandar turned into a political personality with his first political legal battle in South Africa. The objective was to understand the making of Gandhi, the mass leader and father of the nation. Every year, we take one part of his life and dissect it. This year, however, we break the mold. I thought that there is a lot happening in the country that we could put under the microscope and view through Gandhi's eyes. Not only is there widespread social division, authoritarianism, subpar economic performance, neglect and crumbling infrastructure seem to be the norm. India badly needs a reset, and what better way to talk about it than through the lens of Gandhi? As always, Tushar Gandhi, great-grandson of the Mahatma, an author and peace activist, is our guide through this journey. Tushar has written the extraordinary book, Let's Kill Gandhi, a chronicle of the conspiracy to assassinate the Mahatma. The first Gandhi series we ever did in 2021 was based on that extraordinary chronicle. He has also written The Lost Diary of Kastur, My Ba, translating a notebook he found forgotten and worn at the Kasturba Ashram in Indore. We've done a special series around that book too. And as I've said earlier, my hope is we can have such a conversation every year. The sand in the hourglass of our lives will run out at some stage, but there will still be a lot to explore and understand about Gandhi. Tushar, welcome.
Thanks, Ashraf.
Tushar, we live in a time when the very people who should be looking to unite India, the government led by the Bharatiya Janata Party or the BJP, find greater political gain in dividing it. Now, we've had lynchings of Muslims, their calculated exclusion from so many aspects of political and economic life, assaults on Dalit lives, horrific crimes
Yeah.
against women, and a complete capture of institutions. What would Gandhi have done today?
Ashraf, Bapu would have been very sad by the developments because if you look at the last few years of his life, he had seen this division happening, and it saddened him because he thought all the time during the freedom movement that he had united the people. And at the time of freedom, he saw that crumble. And so he was sad. But knowing Bapu, he would not have just sat and shed tears in his ashram. He would have realized the malice in our society. He would have realized that the flaw lies in our society, that we have institutionalized differences to such an extent that it becomes very easy for manipulators to turn them into divisions. And so he would have been holding up a mirror to the society and telling them, let's work together, let's stitch ourselves together. It was easier for him during the freedom movement because the objective was freedom of the nation, country. And so it was easier for him to stitch together that quilt of unity. It would have been a bit difficult today because we have traditionalized and we've given religious sanctions to all our differences and things. And you go into society, you see how much pride today's generation takes in advertising their caste. The headgears, the tilaks, the chotis, and things, they're coming back. They're becoming fashionable. What they do is to announce their hierarchy in the system. It also announces their separatedness from the society. And that's what is being exploited by the politicians who have realized. We have sort of grown up saying British divided us. It wasn't the British who divided us. We were divided. The British exploited it. And since independence, our rulers have even mastered the Brits. So I think Bapu would have long back understood this, and as was his method, started working on the symptoms. before they turned into a malady.
Yeah. And it's a coincidence, but just a couple of days ago, I happened to view part of the film Gandhi made by Attenborough. And in that, there is a great explanation of Ben Kingsley, who plays Gandhi, who makes it very clear that what I am doing as Gandhi is not passive resistance as it is often called. It's actually active resistance. It's just that
Absolutely.
I'm not going to be violent.
Right.
I'm going to not do the very things that empower the British Empire. All that. So my point is, I'm agreeing with you that he would not have just sat in one place and done
Yeah, yeah.
nothing.
This whole thing about passive resistance, it also is used in an excuse not to be reactive. And people will say, no, no, we shouldn't be reacting because that's not right. We should be more philosophical. You have to react. Situations arise, you have to react
Yeah.
because you have not worked when the symptoms were apparent. You were sitting in your comfort zone. Look at where we have reached, and you will see its root in the campaign since the 80s, where initially Advani demonized secularism and made it fashionable to be referred to as secular, then pseudo secular. That became the catchword, pseudo seculars. And right from that time, the attack on the constitution started. But what did the intelligentsia do? This is the lunatic fringe, it'll go away. This can't last, kind of thing. Till we became the fringe and they became the mainstream.
Yeah.
So Bapu would never have waited to this extent.
Yeah.
So if you want to bring about change, you have to react. But better than reacting, if you think reacting is not correct, then you should have been working 10 years ago, not today. And that is the difference between what we are doing today and what Bapu would have done. And that's where we cannot comprehend today what Bapu would have done. Because even while philosophizing about him, people think, Arey, Babri hua, then Bapu would have come out of Sevagram and marched to Ayodhya. No, he would have stood in front of Advani's Rath Yatra in Gujarat and told him, if you want to divide the nation, state that. Don't pretend. We didn't do that.
Absolutely. And the point about the intelligentsia or elite, I think one of the reasons why they didn't react was not just because they thought that, oh, this is the lunatic fringe and we are not. It also, I think there was a lot of, it doesn't affect me directly.
Yeah,
So why should I react?
Absolutely.
Right.
2002 was the same thing.
Absolutely right. That you're referring to the riots in Gujarat.
Yes. And we were in our comfort zone. 92, Mumbai burned.
Yeah.
We were sitting at home. It was only when did our compassion start? When the refugees fleeing from their homes where they were persecuted and congregating at safe places, we started going and giving relief. And even in there, I remember when I started, I said, I'm going to collect things and give it to refugees. I was told, we'll help you, but for Hindus. I was told, we'll help you, but for Muslims. I was told, Muslims have our organizations. We don't need people like you. I said, I'm helping Indians. I'm not helping Hindus or Muslims. But even in 92, right on our doorstep, when the riots were happening, did we show the courage to go and stand in front of the mob and said, first me, then the others? And wherever that happened, there's a famous episode of Sunil Gavaskar.
Yeah. This is an important one. I think, why don't you...
Jumped out of his house and shouted at a mob who were attacking a Muslim family. And they dispersed. Sunil Gavaskar was a celebrity, so it was reported. There were lots of people who did that. But their number was not sufficient. And that is where it was easy for politicians to take credit for that pogrom. And all that cumulatively built up to where we are today.
Which brings me to opportunism in politics, Tushar. So many who swore by the secular philosophy of the Constitution are today on the other side. Did Gandhi address such opportunism in his lifetime?
He did. He realized this symptom in the Congress itself. And he warned the Congress. He said, look, we are stepping in dangerous territories. There are people who are sympathetic. If you look at his peace yatra in Bihar, and if you look at the comments he made during that yatra, they were castigating his congressmen most of the time for the failure of what they should have been doing. When, there's a very famous comment of his that is being used by the Sanghis to say, he said, why didn't you die?
This is in Kerala, actually.
Also in Bihar and Punjab. He was addressing his Gandhians who were complaining to him that these massacres are happening, this are happening. He said, why are you living to tell me, cry about it? Why aren't you dead? Because the massacre should have happened over your dead bodies. That was his philosophy, that if you believe in it so much, then don't wring your hands and said, yeah, we were helpless, what we could do. Go die for the cause you believe in. Bibi Amtus Salam in Noakhali. She went on a fast for what she believed in. She jumped into the mobs and separated them and sent them back home. How many others did that? Not much, not many. And that is where Bapu would have said, take responsibility. See, we fail to realize that there's this cliched statement attributed to Bapu, which my father paraphrased from his writings, be the change you wish to see in the world. The actual meaning of that is take responsibility for what you want to change in the world. Take responsibility were the two catchwords of Bapu. Don't complain. Don't cry. Take responsibility. Nobody wants to do that.
Absolutely. And Tushar, I also want to talk about institutions. Institutions are the beating heart of any democracy, as also ours. And it's clear from the way that often the courts have let us down, the conduct of the election commission in recent times, and also the complete capitulation of the media, that we are a democracy on the brink. In fact, we have been called internationally an electoral autocracy. What was Gandhi's views on institutions, and also was he a true democrat?
When it came to administration, he was a true Democrat. He was actually, at heart, he was an anarchist. He did not believe in institutions. He believed in the individual. And that is where he said that governance should be for the benefit of the last and the weakest person in society. He wanted that kind of democracy where the individual was supreme. Today, the mob is supreme. That's the difference between what he idealized and what is happening today. And that is where, since the mob is supreme, you see, we are having trials by media. The media decides who's guilty. And unfortunately, we've seen courts capitulating to those mobs in their judgments and their rulings. We see populist judgments coming through, where it is because we have legitimized mobs. If you look at the democratic system, it's completely now based on majoritarianism. The brute majority, as I say, look at how the parliament is functioning for the past 11 years. The prime minister functions on brute majority, and when he feels uncomfortable with dissent from the opposition, he conveniently uses this institution of the speaker to disqualify people and again create. You look at the passing of many of the important bills which are almost like constitutional amendments. They have gone through without debate. That is the state of our, and just look at how the judicial system colludes with it. The Kashmir appeal is pending in the Supreme Court. 3 chief justices have come and gone. They have not bothered to take it up and take it to its conclusion. The Maharashtra election thing, it's pending in courts. Now the government has legitimized itself in that.
Absolutely. And I think there are many such things. For
So
example,
many of them.
Omar Khalid's
Umar
bail
Khalid for
petitions.
5 years now, he'll be in the sixth year without trial
Yeah.
in jail.
Yeah.
And so many like him
Many like him. Yeah.
are in jail. So this is where the systems are collapsing, capitulating, and we are heading towards autocracy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to expedite the whole matter, we have a megalomaniac as a prime minister, who his ultimate aim is to become the almighty of India.
But I think there are other aspects of the institutional bit too. Like, for example, now it's likely that we will not have a single woman justice on the Supreme Court bench.
Yeah. And that is, you see, we don't see it in the broader picture. This is Manusmriti coming through the back door. Remember where Manusmriti places women in the hierarchy of society and how it like sanctifies patriarchy. Now, the chief court, which is a constitution authority, will be completely patriarchal. They preach to political parties about giving quotas to women and making it more equal and all that. And look at what last 2-3 years, not a single woman appointed as judge or justice in the Supreme Court. Look at the high courts. For 5 years, women will not graduate to go on to the Supreme Court.
I think we have one Supreme Court justice.
And she's about to retire soon. She was the one who dissented about the recent selection of judges into the Supreme Court.
Yeah. And speaking about women, I think Gandhi had a point of view on a woman president.
Yes, he had expressed his desire that he would like to see the daughter of a Dalit as the first president of India. It took so long for us to have a president, a female president, since that expressed wish of Bapu. We had a woman prime minister, and that we said, oh, that's enough. Enough acknowledgement of women. But since so long, we haven't had a woman chief justice. For so long, how many governors are women? Indira Gandhi is the icon of prime ministership. It feels as if ho gaya, abhi nahi chahiye. So each and every, our constitution talks about equality. Where is the equality? It's just on paper. So after Indira Gandhi, we seem to have told ourselves we've done enough. We don't need to do. And since America is yet to have a woman head of state, we can always point fingers, no?
Actually, Asia seems to have done better when it comes to women heads of government. We've had a whole load of women, from Corazon Aquino to, of course, Mrs. Gandhi, Benazir Bhutto, Bandaranaike in Sri Lanka. Thailand has had, we've had Aung San Suu Kyi. Of course, there is another problem there with Aung San Suu Kyi, but that's a different debate altogether. But we've done better as far as that is concerned. But Tushar, sticking to the institutional bit, in recent times we had a very sort of strange and sudden resignation of Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar, and it came out of the blue, unexpected, and all sorts of stories around it. He, of course, has claimed that it's for health reasons, but somehow that was never a factor in the run-up to the resignation. Absolutely. There's been speculation that it is because he allowed a opposition motion on a judge against whom there are corruption charges, which the government did not like or wanted to do itself. And that's also a symptom of what is wrong with our institutions, right?
Absolutely.
And I also want to talk about another aspect, which is that for a while it was speculated that you would be the opposition's vice president.
Precisely.
3 hours?
For 3 hours.
Well, 3 hours is a long time. Hey, if it depends on your perspective. But there was that speculation also. So, do you want to address that?
Yeah. First, the presidential thing. If you look at how governorships and president in the institution of president and vice president is uh, has been reduced to mere, we used to always talk about how these posts were rubber stamps. But now they've actually become that. And they're expected to behave like that. You look at the president, the silence, when you see them on public functions on the dais, the prime minister doesn't bother to even stand up for the head of the state. The head of the state sometimes is standing, the prime minister is sitting, and they just remain that way. That decorum itself sends out a message to the public, and they say, okay, so these are, we have to do them, have them, that's why we've had them. Now, both of them are very important figures. The president is actually supposed to be the supreme commander of our armed forces, which means that in an emergency, the army is directly under that president. So it's not a mere rubber stamp. And in the event that something happens to the president, they are indisposed, the vice president steps in. And in normal course, the vice president is the one who conducts the proceedings of the upper house.
Ex officio chairperson.
Yeah. And so these are important democratic safeguards. But what do we see in the case of Dhankar? The health reason is an afterthought, an excuse. I don't think he also knew that he was ill before he signed his resignation. He realized that only after he signed the resignation, kind of thing. The real reason is he overstepped the line, the Lakshmana Rekha that the Ram Bhakts draw for everybody. He dared to overstep that and earned the wrath of the Prime Minister, who pictures himself as the one who held Ram Lalla by his finger and brought him to Ayodhya, to his birthplace, if you remember that poster. That's the kind of megalomania this man suffers from. This is the real reason. And this shows the demolition of our democratic safeguards in the past decade. I'm not saying that it didn't happen before that. I'm not at all saying it didn't happen before that, but it used to be a temporary thing, and the powers and the safeguards were restored. But now they've been permanently kind of discounted in the function of our democracy. And that is what we should all be very worried about. It starts with the police. Ashraf, they have taken the oath of protecting the Constitution. But look at the police in every state. They serve the government in power. I have noticed it, being an activist who is in the front line all the time. I have noticed the attitude of the police when we are seen as being on the opposition, from the opposition side. And the same police when we are, or what the side we are seen on is in power, the behavior of them. That is the most worrying thing, because the police are the first contacts of common people in a democracy. And if the idea that they are there not for my benefit takes root, then whom do we turn to? The law passed by the Fadnavis government, the Social Security or Maharashtra Security Act kind of thing, if you read it in details, it's draconian. It wasn't needed. There are so many laws. The police, if they practice them or apply them diligently, they can control the society much more. I was just one of a retired policemen at one of the protest meetings I was at, was saying that, if you're you're standing in a public place at night, and the policeman comes and asks you to identify yourself, and if you just say, no, why should I do that? He can arrest you. The police has that power. Why does he need a new law? because he wants to deny you the access to the court. Now you have access to the court. The lower courts are so compromised that they will do what the government prosecutor tells them to do. And so you have cases like Umar Khalid and the Bhima Koregaon accused and all that, where it has been alleged that all the evidence against them has been uh, sort of posted on their in
Laptops.
their homes, and just because they had Lenin's biography or Stalin's biography in their library, they've been branded as Naxals. Think of it with that, the collusion between the lower judiciary and the police. And then you will see how our institutions have been systematically weakened to the very highest level. And of course, about my 3 hours of glory.
Did we actually contact you about that, or was it
Yes,
just media speculation?
I was contacted by a very senior leader of the India Alliance who told me that I was being considered to as the vice presidential nominee, which took me by surprise. And I said, no, this can't be true. I was on my tour in Bihar, so I just, somebody sent me a message saying there's news that you're being considered to be the VP. So I sent him a laugh out loud emoji and I went to sleep. The next morning, one of the companions, he came and showed me the Hindu story, saying, have you seen this? And I said, oh my God, so that's true. It wasn't a dream kind of thing. And then I got a message from my wife Sonal, saying that, why do I have to come to know about these things from the press? I said, because I came to know of it from the press also, kind of thing. And then, of course, 3 hours later, the candidate was announced. When I heard that story, I realized that I didn't stand a chance, because now even the opposition has to politically have a strategy. And I didn't fit into that strategy. And the candidate now does fit into the strategy where Chandrababu Naidu and the Reddy will have to think twice before they vote with the NDA, because it's a Telugu
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So those strategies, I didn't fit into it. So I knew that I'm not getting it. But it felt good. It felt good that I was at least considered for that. And I told Sonal, I said, please don't start packing your bags, because we're still not moving to Delhi.
So what scared you more? Her asking, why do I have to hear about this from the newspapers, or the actual offer, or the actual news that you were being considered?
What scared me was at the back of my mind, I said, if this happens, I'll lose all my freedom. That scared me the most.
Tushar, coming back to our discussion, I have long felt, and I know that many others feel the same, that the root of Narendra Modi's rise is the 2002 riots in Gujarat. Now, we know Gandhi's first instinct when such events happened was to go to the spot, jump into the cauldron, and calm the fire. He would have been on the move through Gujarat in 2002, wouldn't he?
I think he would have been on the move in Gujarat in 98, was it? When Advani's, no,
No, it
90,
would have been
87,
80, something like late 80s.
88,
Yeah,
when Advani went on his Rath Yatra. He would have realized the game that the Advani was setting in motion. He would have realized that although Advani is standing on the chariot, the horses that are pulling the chariot are the RSS. And he knew how potentially vile and wily RSS were. And he would have started acting on it right from the day the first sticker of Garv se kaho hum Hindu hai started appearing in the public places. Right from the day when the slogan "Hum mandir wahi banayenge" became acceptable and popular. he would have been on the go then. He wouldn't have waited for Narendra Modi to emerge. He would have ensured that Narendra Modi doesn't emerge.
Tushar, I'm also struck by the difference in approaches. And what I mean is, Manipur has been on the boil for a long time now.
Yes.
And yet the Prime Minister didn't think of going there for the longest time. Gandhi, meanwhile, on Independence Day 1947, when India was in the grip of communal violence, did something very different. I'll let you tell the story, actually.
Yeah, on that day, see what happened was when he left Noakhali, he had felt that his work of bringing peace and his ambition of making the Hindus, the remaining Hindus, confident of staying back in Bangladesh was incomplete. So when he left, he gave an assurance. He said, on when independence happens and the partition, the division comes into effect, I'll be in the midst, or in your midst, to ensure that you are not persecuted any further, and to assure you that you have a right to stay in the new dominion, country. So he left Punjab to travel to Noakhali, but the route took him through Calcutta. He had to stop in Calcutta. Now, at that point of time, Shahid Suravardi, who was the butcher of Calcutta in 46 during the Direct Action Day riots, and who instigated the pogroms in Noakhali, realized that Calcutta was going to take revenge on the small Muslim community that remained over there post-independence. And he was worried. He knew that he could not stop or prevent that. So he sent a delegation to Bapu. When Bapu arrived in Calcutta, he sent a delegation of Muslims to Bapu pleading that we need you to be in our midst to ensure our safety because we want to stay back in India. We don't want to leave. So they met Bapu and he said, I don't want to talk with you. If Suravardi has sent you, tell him to come and meet me. I have certain conditions. So when Suravardi came to meet him, he said, look, I will stay back. But because I know that you are the man who sort of orchestrates the pogroms against the Hindus, minorities in Noakhali, and you have still got the ability to do that, you've got to guarantee me that not a single Hindu will even be threatened, let alone driven out or murdered, even threatened in Noakhali. And he said, I want you to seriously give me that guarantee because if I break my promise to the Hindus of what will now become East Pakistan, and if they get intimidated, if they get beaten up, if they get killed, then as a breach of penance for breach of promise, I will end my life and my death will be on your head. Because then I will not listen to anybody, then I will just die, kind of thing. So are you prepared to guarantee that? And Suravardi said, yes, I give you a guarantee that not a single incident will happen. And if you look at partition, when even Calcutta burnt, Noakhali didn't, Tipera didn't, the worst districts that had suffered in 46 did not burn. It was just because Bapu forced Suravardi to promise and forced him to act on that. And that's why he lived in Haidari House, stayed in Haidari House on Independence Day.
In Calcutta.
In Calcutta. And he told Suravardi that you have to come and live with me too. Because we have to become the visual of Hindu-Muslim unity in independent India. So very famous scene in Gandhi, the film, where they're standing in the open window of Haidari House and a mob of the right-wing Hindu is standing below abusing them and they start throwing stones. In reality, Bapu was sleeping and Suravardi had just gone back to get his essentials to come and stay with Bapu. So he was saved from the lynching. But the mob invaded Haidari House and actually reached Bapu. Very violent mob. And Bapu calmed them down, kind of thing. And that is what Mountbatten referred to as the Calcutta miracle. And that is what Mountbatten exploited on the 12th of January when Delhi started burning. Because he knew that what this man had done in East Pakistan, what this man had done in Calcutta, only this man could perform the same miracle in Delhi.
And this is quite a freaky story because I know we've covered it in earlier specials, but the mob kind of goes from room to room, eventually
Yeah.
reaching the room that Gandhi is in. And he and his followers think that this is the
It's
end.
gone, yeah.
And Gandhi kind of opens the door, starts talking to them, says, sit down, has a conversation with them, calms them down, sends them back, and then goes back to sleep.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He says, my sleep is essential. I've got to go back. And that is the time when the famous uh, uh, speech by Nehru is done in the what is now the Parliament of India. That is the time when at dawn, India, explodes in joy of freedom and freedom. And this man is sleeping.
Tushar, just coming on to other political hot button issues of the moment, there's been a huge national controversy about language imposition. The southern states, especially Tamil Nadu, have come out strongly against the centre's attempt to impose Hindi on them. Now, there has been a backtracking and all of that that's happened. Did Gandhi have a point of view on Indian languages, and did he ever talk about the inclusion in school syllabi?
He always talked about a national language, and that's why he set up Hindi Prachar Sabha and a Hindustani Prachar Sabha. You must remember that Bapu believed that a national language should combine both Devanagari and Urdu. And Hindustani was that. Hindi was never, even today when we talk about the Hindi belt, if you went back to 4 decades or 5 decades, even there they didn't speak Hindi. They spoke Hindustani, which was heavily laced with Urdu.
Yeah. In fact,
This,
there has been a lot of conversation about the fact that these are not really different languages.
yeah,
They are very much joined at the hip. It used to be called Rekhta at one point, and I mean that's a different rabbit hole
but
altogether.
even look at this, even in UP, which is supposed to be the Hindi hinterland, and in Bihar, you have Maithili, you have other dialects,
Braj.
where when you go to those regions, you hear a different language. It's only amongst the educated that you hear the Hindi because that's what everybody sort of understands, kind of thing. But when you go to those regions which have their old languages, they will speak to you, even the educated will speak to you in that language. So that language pride has always been there. It's our heritage, it's our culture. And the South has always rebelled against the imposition of Hindi on them because they feel that they have a sufficiently old language of their own which they want to adhere to, they want to keep uh, to. And also, you must understand that the Sangh's strategy of this periodic imposition of Hindi is also, they're just pushing the envelope. Every time they will push it, they'll backtrack, but they would have gained a millimeter. And the Sangh is like a termite. It says 1 millimeter is enough for this just now. Slowly, I'll make the entirety insignificant, kind of thing. So every time they'll push it. Now look at what is being done in Maharashtra. Maharashtra already in their syllabus had Hindi from 5th onwards. There was no need. At one point of time, the government appoints experts to say we want to reduce the burden on the primary schools children so that their personality personalities will grow and at a more or less intense manner. Then they bring in a legislation saying they'll have to study Hindi from the standard one. But they are going to study Hindi from standard 5. Why do you want to bring it in at standard 1? It's just that Bihar is going to the elections. UP is also next year they will go for elections. And the Maharashtra parties are going to, on the basis of this measure, they're going to start responding and reacting to the non Marathi migrants in Mumbai and Maharashtra. And that's exactly what is being done. On the pretext of not speaking Marathi, the North Indians are being slapped around and terrorized and all that. So people from our spectrum also fall into the trap. And these people, they're not in love with Hindi. They're not even in love with Marathi. Their children study in all the elite English schools, and after matriculation, they go to London, England, and America and study in those universities. They can't speak Marathi to even save their lives. If we were to make speaking Marathi as the entry criteria to Mumbai, these politicians' families would be the first ones to be externed, kind of thing. But politically, they can make things, and the Sangh can manipulate them. They know that as soon as we do this, the backlash is not going to come against us, it's going to come against the North Indians, the South Indians. Balasaheb Thackeray created a whole party on the basis of the prejudice of the South Indians. Okay, the Lungis are taking over our jobs. So it was a backlash against the South Indians in Mumbai. Now the same thing is being done with the North Indians.
I think also the Sangh has this agenda of uniformity, uniformization, so to speak, of everything. So one language, one India, one language, so on. That's true also of, by the way.
It's incomplete. One language, one India, one election, one caste.
Yeah.
And that I don't believe the abolition of the castes, as Baba Saheb and Bapu had said. That one caste means Brahmins.
So, but the point I was trying to make is there's a similar attempt on diets. Now, there is a attempt to ban meat in some places. Already we have a beef ban in so many places.
On Independence Day, they banned meat.
Yeah. And, foist vegetarianism on people. Now, I just want to go through some research before you respond to that. A data for India analysis said 8 out of 10 Indians aged 15 to 49 eat some form of animal-sourced protein, excluding dairy. So it's a form of meat in some way. The share of adults who eat meat has increased, rising from 74% in 2006 to 80% in 2021. Now, the consumption of meat is more common among lower income groups, which shows that it is a critical source of protein and nutrition among a group that is typically undernourished. So, nearly 9 out of 10 people belonging to the poorest 20% of India's population eat meat. So, forcing them to not eat meat would result in an even worse nutrition scenario. Now, I'll just expand on that a little bit. So, while plant-based options like beans can be affordable, meat can offer a concentrated source of protein and essential nutrients like iron and vitamin B12, which can be particularly important for individuals with limited access to diverse food sources. Now, in some contexts, meat might also be more readily available or easier to prepare than other protein sources. And this is especially important for those with limited time or resources.
True, absolutely true. And this also panders to what I said, answered in the previous thing, that the only, and that too not exclusively, community in India which would applaud vegetarianism. I'm not talking about vegans. They're a minuscule minority who would applaud vegetarianism are the Brahmins. And that too not exclusively, because we know that there are Konkani Brahmins, there are Bengali Brahmins who will eat everything, kind of thing. So, but that is the class that the BJP and the Sangh has always patronized and believed in. And so that is the agenda they will play on. And so, and also it helps in, again, polarizing. So every time in Maharashtra, I'll talk about Maharashtra, because we talked about the Marathi versus outside languages issue and how that. Every time this vegetarian debate springs up in Mumbai, the Marathi parties and the Marathi politicians will start accusing the Gujaratis and the Jains of imposing their will on poor Maharashtrian people and denying them their right to enjoy the thing. And so it's not about vegetarianism. What the Sangh is doing is also not about vegetarianism. It is to create and expand the rifts in our society. You started this talk with why are we so divided? And you see on each and every issue, personal also, how these divisions are being engineered to become wider and wider and wider till we no longer remain one people. The Prime Minister talks about one elections, one nation, one language, one people. When has he talked about one people? Because when they start talking about one people, then it's only politically it's only the right wing, and socially it's only the top class, the top castes. So we must understand this whole thing. Muslims are visually the target, but they are subtly targeting Christians. They're subtly sending a message to the Sikhs and the Parsis and everybody. They are subtly sending the message to the Dalits and the OBCs also, that start learning to be subservient again.
Tushar, I wanted to also talk about the economy and various aspects of that. Now, Atmanirbhar Bharat is a flagship program of the government. Now, Gandhi was clear that there is no Atmanirbharta without the so called village republics. Now, the concept of a village as a self sustaining economic entity, I'm not saying it's a republic in the literal sense. What was his overarching vision of the Indian economy?
He believed in the bottoms up model of creating wealth. He believed that if we were to create a system where wealth was created at the bottom of the pyramid and its overflow kept reaching up and up and up and up, we would create a more sustainable economic model.
So, trickle up as opposed to trickle down.
Yeah, climb up as opposed to trickle down. But the West was enamored of the create wealth at the top and it will all trickle down theory. And so we blindly took to that. We did create wealth at the top. Look at what the situation is today. We boast about how many more billionaires we have in India. But when you compare it to the population, what is it? 0.00001%.
There are some statistics that will come later in our conversation, but you're right. There's a massive concentration of wealth at the top.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't percolate down. I always give this analogy that the only thing that trickles down is shit, because we don't want it near us. Nothing else trickles down. Knowledge doesn't benefit the society. It remains confined to the people who want to be intellectuals. Knowledge doesn't percolate to the society. It doesn't make a difference. We get technology that sends our spaceships to Mars, and it uses the cheapest technology. And yet, I was in Koshi, in Bihar. They can't control a river. So how is reaching Mars going to benefit those people whose homes are swept away every year, and everybody shrugs their shoulder and says, this is an annual event, what can be done? And they've also learned to shift every year, so why bother about it? This is the attitude that Bapu had realized. And he said, let us work at the bottom. Once the bottom becomes strong enough, once the foundation of our republic is strong enough, then we can reach esoteric heights. But at the moment, the pyramid is inverted. And that's why it swings. It's like a yo-yo,
Yeah.
and we can't stabilize it.
I don't think he was against science or
Never,
technology, and but
never. He
you
was
know,
he throughout his life he talked about scientific temperament, rational thought. That is what on which the entire freedom movement
yeah,
was based.
absolutely. But I want to kind of pull at this thread a little bit about you mentioned Koshi, and
Yeah,
the poorest areas of India are completely ignored and forgotten.
yeah,
And I think one of the arguments has been that the current economic vision is too urban centric or industry centric. And
absolutely.
also, I want to make it clear that it's not just this government that has thought so. I think it's been successive governments across the
Absolutely.
political
Because it's
spectrum.
easy, Ashraf. It's very easy. It's very easy to get a capitalist person or a high network individual to invest in one factory. You go and tell them, invest in every village. You go and tell Adani that you won't get land, you won't get the natural resources. Go and invest, adopt a state and invest in their villages to ensure that every home becomes a producer. Will he do that? Because he'll say, yaar, oh, even if they earn a profit, how am I going to collect it? I'm not going to do that. But you give me 10,000 acres of Chhattisgarh land, you give me 1 lakh acre of the Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand forests, drive out the tribals, and I'll make billions out of it. But how does it benefit those tribals? How does it benefit those villagers who have lost their lands? They are given jobs of sweepers in these ultra high tech factories. They'll see how wealth is being created. Maybe you must have been born, but you were too young to appreciate it. Do you remember Do Bigha Zameen?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There's
Balraj
a
Sani and
poignant scene over there where Balraj Sani, after losing his hut, his ancestral home, brings his family, his children, to show them where their ancestral home was. And he's pointing out to various spots in the factory and saying, "Idhar hamari rasoi thi, idhar hamara गाय का गोठा था." That's what they're reduced to. That what do they get? Balraj Sahni ends up pulling rickshaws in that movie
dies pulling
and
it.
dies because of that. That that is what we have successfully done in this whole economic model, which we like to boast that it's an economic miracle.
Yeah, but Tushar, there's also a fact, right? Pre 1991, pre liberalization,
Yeah,
India was extremely poor.
it
We were
was.
not able to lift people out of poverty, not at any real scale anyway. Now, this new economic approach has lifted millions out of poverty and produced unprecedented growth. So,
But
how
it's
do you?
so fragile, Ashraf. It's so fragile. It's not sustainable. Look at what COVID did. If you look at the statistics of COVID, you will realize that COVID forced so many families, right, even in the middle class,
Yeah.
to collapse below the poverty line once again. So, it's not sustained. What Bapu talked about was a sustainable economic model. Once you lift somebody up, that person remains over there. Now, even at my economic stage, it's I'm hoping it doesn't happen. But suppose tomorrow I'm diagnosed with cancer. Even if my life is saved, the economics of my family will be ruined to such an extent that I will not be able to live the way I'm living today.
In fact, there's this very famous line that most of the middle class is just one hospitalization bill away from going
Poverty.
back to
Yeah,
poverty.
yeah, absolutely. And look how healthcare is becoming unaffordable for people. Maharashtra still is better off. I'll give you an example. A dental operation. You go to a private dentist, they'll give you a quote of anything above a lakh of rupees for just the removal of a wisdom tooth. You go in Mumbai, you go to the government, the corporation run Nair Dental College, same facilities, not the five-star ambience. That operation is done for 500 rupees. Now they want to close down Nair Dental, privatize it, and give it away. Where does the poor or the middle class go? If I have to go to the bank and ask for a loan. I want to get my wisdom tooth extracted. Give me a loan. What kind of a healthcare system are we providing?
Yeah.
So all these things point to the fragility of this economic model that we tom about.
But do you think Gandhi's vision is practical in this day and age? Because the world is not the same.
Once again, I'll say Gandhi's vision or Gandhi's ideology cannot be used as a headache pill. You can't come and say, oh, we are in a crisis. Let's go back to Gandhi. It's not going to work. You have to believe in that. You have to implement it. It's a slow crawl. It's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to have this obsession about quarterly results. Gandhi's ideology doesn't work when you are obsessed by quarterly results. It says 10 years down the line, this segment is going to be at this level. But from now to 10 years, it's going to be hard sweat and blood and tears that you have to endure. पर आज क्या है? The economist will come and say, you're not performing up to standard on this quarter, get out. You're out. We can't use this. Gandhi's ideology doesn't work in those kinds of
And I don't think we look hard
circumstances.
enough at the annual results of the sector as a whole, the agriculture sector, I mean, which the economic
Yeah,
survey and
absolutely,
all of those.
absolutely. And yet, you look at the fact that agriculture output is the determining factor in our the important economic aspects. Industrial factor doesn't contribute as much as the agriculture. One failed crop season and the indices drop. Why are the two biggest billionaires of India eyeing greedily the agriculture sector?
In that same line of thinking, I want to talk a little bit about the rural economy as a whole, which is wider than agriculture. Now, it is widely accepted that India's rural economies are distressed.
Absolutely.
Now, studies have shown that after adjusting for price hikes, real earnings and wages for people working in agriculture, construction, manufacture, and services, which employ most of India's rural poor, have stagnated. Debt levels, however, have risen. Now, the average amount of debt among rural households increased from 32,500 rupees in 2012 to 59,700 in 2018, according to the State Bank of India. Adding to the distress, inflation in rural areas was higher than in cities between 2019 and 2024, official data shows. Now, this was mainly due to the impact of rising food prices, which accounts for more than half of rural households' spending.
That this shows what I'm talking about, Ashraf, is how inappropriate the economic model that we've so embraced. Now I'll talk to you about the rural thing. Two scenarios that are happening. Why is the agriculture sector being crippled? You go to the villages. Today the villages are like old age homes. The fields are over there, everything is over there. Medium and large farmers are crying because they don't have labor. The big farmers are embracing automation because they don't want to be at the mercy of the agriculture labor. The agriculture labor is saying, Manrega, Ladki Bahin in Maharashtra, and its spin offs in various other states. All that ensures that my family gets about 1,500 to 2,000 rupees a month. I take a 50,000 loan from the bank. I get a monthly installment of 1,000. 500 I can provide one good meal in 2 days to my family. So why am I bothered? They'll stay in the village. While I keep giving the example of Bihar, the youth of Bihar will go to Punjab, will go to Haryana, will go to Mumbai, will go to Bangalore to work over there. and they will send back some money to Bihar, so that with all the freebies, this money will ensure that the family survives. Villages are merely surviving, they are not thriving in present day India. And the government is not bothered. What does the Prime Minister do? You look at when he visits cities. If he is to pass through a poor locality or a hutment colony by the roadside, they'll build blinds.
This is especially when there are foreign guests coming
Even
in
when he
also.
is there, I have seen that. I've seen that. Just now, I was, or he was, I like to say, he was following me in Bihar. He'll say I was following him.
Yeah,
That's
for
fine.
those who don't know, you've
Yeah.
been campaigning in Bihar.
I've
This
been
is,
campaigning
yeah,
in
we are
Bihar.
recording in late August. So,
Yeah.
by the time this comes out, it'll be October.
And every place he was going to was being spruced up, beautified. The roads were being, it was very funny. He was in Gaya. Uh, and the roads on the routes where he was going to pass were like tarmac, runway smooth. And as soon as where his destination was, 100 meters from there, it was all full of potholes, kind of thing. And so this is how we sort of fool ourselves that we are very progressed, we're very good. I was coming back, I had to take a drive of 4 hours to reach Patna airport from, I was in Araria, and we had to drive to Patna 4 hours. It took us 6 hours because although it was a 4-lane highway, it was full of potholes. The surface was crumbling. And so, although we take pride in saying, look at how many roads we've built, India never has had this. But look at how they serve. The farmer loses his land. Now, this new expressway that Maharashtra is planning, I don't even remember, something Shakti Peeth or something highway they are saying. They're saying we're connecting Kolhapur and some other places. It's going to take up some of the most fertile lands of Western Maharashtra, farmers, and create a 6-lane highway over there. And what will they do? They will then give off patches of their highway to their cronies and buddies to manage. In return, they will get the lands which have been acquired from the farmers to put up malls and highway rest areas and food courts and all that. And what will the villager whose ancestral land has been taken away from there think? He'll say, आता sumo घेतो आणि भाड्यावर चालवतो. That's all they are left
I'll just
with.
translate for those who don't speak
Yeah.
Marathi. What Tushar said was, I'll buy an SUV and I'll kind of rent it out.
Yeah. And that's what happens. And what does the village youth say? I'll get a license and I'll drive a car. And that's it.
Or
That's
work in
what
those
they are
malls.
reduced to. And that is where the villages are in distress. Instead of becoming productive units of the Indian Republic, as Bapu had envisaged, they are becoming parasites on the economy who are dependent on monies sent from outside.
And also, I think, speaking of rural distress, we've also had incomprehensible acts like demonetization. Now, rural economies are all about cash.
Yeah.
One impact was that India's rural wage growth slumped from an average of 11% in the financial years 2013 to 2015 to a mere 0.45% in the financial years 2016 to 2018. This is due to the negative impact of demonetization, according to an India Ratings report. An analysis of 25 occupations in rural areas showed that rural wage growth slumped to decimal points from double digits in the last 3 years, despite government support.
It is. This is where the British East India Company exploited the whole nation for their profitability. The Indian government, independent Indian government, and please note this. I'm not saying the last 10 years or 11 years. I'm talking about independent Indian governments have only exploited the village potential. I'm going to jump back to the vegetarianism question. After independence, nutrition was something that worried India because we had chronic food shortages. And out of that desperation, two major revolutions emerged: the white and the green revolution. And no matter how much we worship the cow, the white revolution was built on buffaloes. It was buffalo milk that finally made us self reliant on milk as a food source and a protein source.
And India is now one of the largest dairy producers in the world.
Dairy producers, but is it going to remain that? You look at what the Hindutva forces have done, the beef ban. Buffaloes are being massacred to meet the meat requirement and to meet the export. You look at how much buffalo meat is being exported from India. How 10 years down the line, will we have sufficient buffaloes to produce the milk that we are saying about this thing? So that is exactly what is happening with the entire farming sector also. That it's dying out because of our neglect. Look at what the distress it's causing on the farmers who depended on being able to sell their non-productive cattle, because in farming communities you will see that bullocks are still being used in a major way as to haul produce and to plow fields and things. Not every farmer can afford a tractor. But now, non-productive bullocks can't be sold, so they don't have money to buy productive bullocks and cows. And so they're saying, no, 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 this will fall on our heads. So again, an ancient model, and we take pride in our ancient heritage, but an ancient sustainable model is completely being destroyed. Where it wasn't as if everybody just sold off their cattle for money. The cattle came in when they needed to replace with a more productive animal. They came in handy when there was a drought and they could not sustain them, and then sell those cattle and earn money to sustain their families. All these things were part of that system that made them relevant and reliant on themselves. Now, one after the other, under one pretext or the other, we've taken that away. There is a concerted to industrialized farming. Under the guise of efficient farming, we are opening the doors to the factory farms of the West. And in India, we have noticed that even our agrarian reliance is not due to the few large farmers. It's the cumulative production of the medium and small size farmers that fill up the mandis of our food corporations and things. But they are not being given sustenance. I'm sorry, I keep coming back to Bihar. I was in the Bihar area, which is the biggest cash crop over there is makhanas,
Yeah.
the popped lotus seeds kind of thing. You'll see acres and acres of makhanas. You'll see laborers who sit and pop those seeds, and you'll see the whole industry around it. They are in a crisis today because they don't get a sustainable price where they are manufactured. And today, go to one of the superstores, you will see makhana and makhana products under the
Health
the
food,
luxury food
healthy snacking
this
kind
thing,
of thing. Yeah.
You go and buy makhana in one of the malls, they'll charge you 1,000 to 2,000 rupees for a kilo. I think I'm saying I'm not even accurate in that. It's more. We make a survey of that. The farmer who harvests, and you know how I was surprised. They said the harvesters of makhana, there's a specialized community that harvests makhanas. They say वो बहरे हो जाते हैं. I said, why? क्यों बहरे हो जाते हैं? तो दे सेड वो मखाना निकालने के लिए उनको अंदर डुबकी मारना पड़ता है ना, और दलदल में खोजना पड़ता है, उनको ही मालूम है कैसे निकालने का. The effect is that they get severe ear infections, inner ear infections, and their fate is that within a few years they'll go deaf, kind of thing. And yet they are not getting the remunerative price for it. The government doesn't give them the minimum support price that the farmers are agitating for. So all these things have to be, we don't bother to go into the depth of,
Yeah.
we'll talk about very fancy terms, agrarian distress, we'll talk about village distress, and economists will come and give you shandar papers and all that on it. But what it matters is the individual, the suffering of the individual, the suffering of the family. Unless we address that, how are we going to resolve the issue?
Yeah, I think this has been a consistent issue because farmers are just not getting the remuneration that they need or deserve for their prices, even in times of very high prices at the retail level. I remember almost a couple of decades ago, I was covering a state election in Maharashtra, and in Pune district, it's a region called Purandare.
Yeah.
I came across a farmer who had collected roughly 3 tons of onions from his field and was just letting them rot on the side. And he was standing there, and I kind of asked him, I said, why aren't you selling this? Why are you letting this happen? He said, it's costlier for me to transport these to the market and sell than the money I get for the onions. So it's cheaper for me to take the loss than to actually conduct that business.
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely. And look at the facilities that the farmers produce. Why don't we have talukas, we have jillas. I say every taluka level, why don't we have large cold storages where farmers can easily access it and put their thing? You will see that in the potato producing areas of UP and Haryana, because that is a huge money making thing, the farmers themselves. And even over there, you will find more private sector cold storages than. I was once traveling from Delhi to Azamgarh, and we were cutting across the potato thing. And Ashraf, like, I was in Batata Vada heaven over there, because trucks and trucks of loaded potato were passing by, bullock carts loaded with potatoes passing by. And I said, where are all these going? They said, they're going to the cold storage. And we passed a couple of cold storage. There were 100 potato laden trucks and vehicles in line waiting to put their produce in the cold storage. And they said, if these people don't find access to the cold storage within the next 4 days, half their produce will rot. Now, why isn't it priority to set up cold storages in, say, a cluster of 10 villages? You can do that. Make a cooperative. Tell them one time aid, you're getting a cold storage. Build it, manage it. Keep your produce there. The day they do that, the middleman will lose the edge of saying, see, you don't make a deal with me today. 3 days later, the price drops. 4 days later, you can go to hell, I'm not interested. But if they have a cold storage, when the middleman comes, they'll say, this is the price, and you take it. Tomorrow it's going to increase. Day after, don't come back. We don't want to do that. And now they are now changing the thing. The 3 agro laws that were protested against, the Prime Minister took them back. But the new law that replaces it makes it even more difficult to the farmer to access it. So if you look at the policies, you'll see that businessmen and industrialists are getting into the food storage business, and they're going to make millions out of it. They're only going there, they're only attracted to it because they see the millions and the captive potential of that business. And so the farmer is going to be left bereft. Instead of food storage or agricultural produce storage being firmly kept in the cooperative sector, where the farmer controls everything, it is now becoming a private industry where the farmer has no choice or option. And there is a possibility of monopolies, food monopolies being created. And that is not going to benefit the farmer. At least when we had food storage and food marketing in the public sector, the government was morally bound to listen to the farmers. If you remember, every harvest season, farmers would agitate for a minimum support price, and the government was forced to negotiate with them. But once the mandis are privatized, once the storage is privatized, then whom will the farmers agitate against? How will they ensure that beneficial prices and prices which reflect the retail market prices will get them their fair share? So this is the actual distress that our villages and our farmers are facing.
Since we are on the subject of rural economies, what's your view of Manrega, or the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act? The last numbers I read said there were more than 12 crore workers registered under Manrega, and the guarantee is for 100 days of work per household every year. But government data says that since 2018-19, only 7.4% of Manrega registered households completed 100 days.
Yeah, there are two things. One is that the Manrega guarantee is also making the rural poor complacent. Because as it is traditionally, the people who are dependent on agricultural labor had a limited number of days of earning, either at sowing time, when mass numbers were employed or hired, or harvest time, when mass numbers of people are harvested. In between those two times, the farmer required a bare minimum, when a bit of weeding had to be done, or some farms were protected from the crops were being protected. Beyond that, he didn't require. So they are traditionally used to that periodic work. Manrega provides that, where they don't even have to go out, they just stay at home. And so farmers have started complaining that for us to hire labor is becoming expensive. Another reason is because the younger productive force is moving away from the villages. The farmers are finding it difficult. If you now you go into the rural areas, agricultural labor is basically women. Women who have been left behind in the villages are working as agricultural labor all over India. So Manrega that way is, but when you look at it from the rural poverty angle, they are so doomed to living in poverty. Even with Manrega, they still live in a debt trap. And why do you think the Ladki Bahin scheme in Maharashtra became such a popular thing? Because every little penny coming into the house means a lot to a large segment of our population. And so we have to, no matter how much we talk about this welfare state being a curse and things, there is no alternative to it, because we have not created employment where it is required. Gainful employment, honorable employment.
Yeah, I think that's also where the demand is, not just to raise the guaranteed days from 100 to 150, but also to raise the wage.
Yes.
But I think more than that, there's a consistent allegation that the union government is holding back Manrega wages in states ruled by other parties, Bengal especially.
Absolutely, and that is it's a crime that this government is doing, and that is where, once again, the top-heavy model of economy is becoming a curse, and especially after GST, when the tax directly goes to the central government, the state and the panchayats are crippled by the fact. And that's why Bapu said that if you have a village republic, the wealth will be created there consumed over there, and what is surplus will move up the pyramid. Now what is happening is that the Prime Minister and the union government decides who will get what. And although GST has that structure where states are guaranteed their returns, it's at the mercy of the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. And that's why Kerala is continuously on the brink of bankruptcy. Bengal has to continuously fight for the thing. And the Prime Minister on his campaign tours keeps going and telling the voters that if you want a better deal, have the double engine sarkar. So a political monopoly is being created from this economic model that is autocratic in its existence.
Yeah.
Where it concentrates it's like a grip on the windpipe. If the nation was a human being dependent on oxygen to breathe, this top-heavy, top-controlled economy model is like a garrote on the neck, and it keeps strangling the person.
Yeah. But Tushar, returning to agriculture for a bit. Now, agrarian distress we know is an issue. Many think it's being swept under the carpet. A Supreme Court appointed panel said in November 2024 about farmers' grievances and protests that agrarian distress has risen due to stagnant yields, rising costs, debt, and an inadequate market system, which you also touched upon to some extent. Specifically about Punjab and Haryana, it said, and I quote, in 2022-23, institutional debt of farmers in Punjab was 73,673 crore rupees, while in Haryana, it was even higher at 76,630 crore rupees as per the National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development, NABARD. These are 2023 numbers. In addition, there is a significant burden of non-institutional debt on farmers, which is estimated to be 21.3% of total outstanding debt on farmers in Punjab and 32% in Haryana, according to the National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, stop quote. Now, Gandhi was very specific that agriculture must be protected and nurtured.
It isn't. We make a pretext of how protective our policies are. But if you look at what matters to the agriculturist, the policies are all telling him, live in debt. And what is happening? They have been liberated from the Saukar to a certain extent, whereby they were eternally in the debt trap. But if you go and look at the landless laborers, you talked about how we've brought up our population from below the poverty line. You bandied some numbers also. But have we brought up the number of landowners, agricultural landowners, from what it was? The landless laborers. If you go to Champaran, the landless laborers who agitated for their rights in 1917, their descendants are still fighting for land rights.
That's Bihar again.
In Bihar again. And this is just one state. In every state, in Maharashtra also, the thing is that are you giving them money? You're giving them Manrega, you're giving them everything. Are you giving them land? Saying, okay, you're going to get a plot of land, and you're going to get assistance in technology so that you can multiply your production on that land. You cited the Supreme Court thing. They're saying the increase in yield is not happening. Why is it not happening? It's not going to happen because you're going to give bigger farms to the farmers. They're going to be stuck with the acreage that they have. It's up to you. How did we succeed in the Green Revolution? Because they doubled the produce. Okay, they used chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which we are now understanding are creating problems. Punjab has become the cancer capital of the country. It's because of the intensive use of pesticides and chemical fertilizers. But now we have the opportunity of organic farming. But we are not educating the farmer to the benefits of that. We are not educating the farmer. You go to many of these agricultural corporates, they have fancy displays of how they can multiply farm output by their technology. But you go to the farms, you don't see that replicated there. Because how is the farmer who is not getting guaranteed support price to be profitable going to be able to invest in new systems? So the whole thing is so badly engineered. And you look at why is the farmer distress increasing? Because they've landed in the trap of the banks. Government will say NABARD will provide the agricultural relief. NABARD will say we are not banking, we are not going to disburse loans, we are just going to underwrite the loans. Existing banks will disburse the loans. What do the banks do? They outsource recovery operations. You go into villages, you'll see recovery agents standing outside the farmer's hut, threatening to take his possessions, defaming them in their villages, in their communities as non-fault. You don't see that happening with big defaulters who run away after taking huge loans which actually trigger bank collapses. But you go to a farmer's hut, you'll see notices plastered on his door, you will see recovery agents harassing them, you'll see people, announcing their defaults in the communities they are living in. That is causing the farmer suicide. And that is where the whole agrarian economy is failing.
In fact, the same panel, by the way, said something that loops back to the rural distress points that we've been discussing as a whole, and I quote, "Rural society as a whole is under severe economic stress. At the national level, 46% of total workers are absorbed in agriculture, whose share in income is only 15%, 1-5. Not only this, there is a very high rate of disguised unemployment and a large number of unpaid family workers. A significant proportion among them is working poor." Stop quote. Now, Tushar, there have been protests in recent times against the so-called corporate takeover of agriculture, rural markets and public services. We've been discussing that, of course. Farmers have alleged that the government is actively enabling multinational corporations and large domestic corporations to dominate every stage of agriculture, from seed production to procurement, storage, transport and the retail trade. And they also oppose the corporatization of farmers as producer organization or FPOs, contract farming arrangements and public-private partnership models in agriculture. They argue that such policies undermine traditional farming practices, marginalize smallholders and increase dependency on corporate controlled supply chains. Now, this part about traditional bit is really what I wanted to ask you about, because Gandhi was famous for advocating traditional methods of agriculture and was opposed to large-scale corporatization of it. Why was that, and do you think his model is feasible in this age?
We talk about rural distress, and then we reduce it merely to numbers. And as soon as there is a actual or manipulated better numbers, we still feel satisfied. But those numbers only remain on paper. You don't see it reflected in the person it should be making a difference to. I'm going to give you an example. It's a bit outside the agriculture thing, but I believe it is agriculture. Salt production. India is one of the biggest salt producers in the world. The fancy sea salt variety. Kutch, little run of Kutch, has a concentrated salt producing thing, and it is the salt harvesting is still traditional. Agarias do it. For generations they have been doing it. For generations they've been fighting to get recognized as farmers. Because they do that. They cultivate salt and they harvest it. Now monopolies have been created because table salt has to be iodized in India. I'm saying yes, there is a need, do it. But you've done it in a way where only 5 companies have formed a cartel of salt manufacture, table salt manufacture. Whereas if you remember in your childhood, and I remember it from my childhood, salt sellers used to come with baskets on their head.
That is right.
And our mothers, even though they bought refined salt for day-to-day cooking, when they made pickles, they insisted on getting the salt from those salt sellers, because that was what they claimed was the most tasty, delicious salt. Have you seen a single salt seller in the last few years, decades? An entire profession has been wiped out. Now these salt makers in Kutch, they have been disenfranchised. I won't take the name, but all the salt pan lands are being handed over to a big industrialist who wants to set up wind farms over there. So traditional centuries of industry that was given to the villagers, agariyas, is being taken away. We're not batting an eyelid for it. Why? Because what difference does an agariya make? Now, Maharashtra, Western Maharashtra, sugarcane belt. Sugar decides who becomes the chief minister of Maharashtra. Sugarcane cultivation and sugar production. Do you know that the entire process depends on migrant labor? And that labor goes from district to district in the pursuit of sugar harvesting and all that. But they are in a debt trap. Because their wages are so meager, because for generations, although they are skilled sugarcane workers who sow and harvest sugarcane, they don't own a piece of land where they can grow their own sugarcane. So they are there, and contractors have villages which are beholden to them. If you go into rural Maharashtra, there are big moneyed individuals who have a monopoly on sugarcane labor. 10 villages, 50 villages, 20 villages. Nobody else dare go and hire anybody from that village without going through the contractor. And that contractor holds them in debt all the time. Because these people, for their existence, will go to him and said, Shadi hai, death ho gaya, birth ho gaya, we have to celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi, we have to celebrate something, money, give us money. And what they do, take the money and pledge their next year's labor to that. And because they are chasing their migrant occupation, they take their whole possession. If you go during the sugarcane planting season or harvesting season and travel through Western Maharashtra, you'll see caravans of these people in their bullock carts, if they have a tractor, they'll be in a tractor, and families with all their possessions moving from one place to another. They even carry their pets with them. They'll go and set up their temporary village over there. They'll do their work, then move on. Once the season ends, they get into another contractor. And if you look at the sugar belt, side by side with the sugar production, there is brick production happening. And they will start working as brick producers, on whose bricks entire metropolitan cities are being built. They don't have a piece of land. They don't own a pakka house. So who is it benefiting? Where is our economic model? Where are we talking about lifting them out of the poverty trap and making them respect themselves? At the end of their life, their legacy to their children is poverty. Because the children also have no recourse than to follow in the footsteps of their parents. And this is where we don't understand the root cause of... we are not empowering them. Our policies are not empowering them. Our policies are telling them, live in debt. That is your destiny. You have to live in debt either to the saukar or to the contractor or to the government. But you have to live in debt.
And that results in what I wanted to discuss next, which is inequality. There is unbelievable inequality in India right now, and it is estimated that the richest 1% of Indians owns 58% of the country's wealth, while the richest 10% of Indians own 80% of the wealth. Now, this trend has consistently increased, which means that the rich are getting richer much faster than the poor. So, this means that the gap is consistently widening. And it is said that inequality today is worse than it was during the British Raj, when it was estimated that the share of the top 1% of national income was 20.7%. These are 1939-40 figures.
It is. That's what, you see, that is where we abandoned Gandhi and sort of accepted the doom of. We became, Bapu said at the time of independence, and that was a very telling statement that he made, that this is only political freedom. Social freedom will happen when the poorest of the poor and the weakest of the weak will become sufficiently liberated to become the masters of their own destiny. He didn't mean that we will create merely a welfare state. He said the welfare part of it will be to empower the people so that they could start living a life of self-respect. And he said, that is the Purna Swaraj I will be working for. And 78 years later, that Purna Swaraj has not been achieved. Nobody's bothered about that Purna Swaraj. Today, if you go and talk to majority of the governments, they won't know what Purna Swaraj. They'll say, what are you talking about? Don't you know we became independent on 15th August? They don't know about Purna Swaraj. They don't know the ideal of Purna Swaraj.
And it's almost as if a few business families have divided the entire economy up among themselves. Now, someone has a stranglehold on infrastructure, someone has on energy, someone on retail, and so on.
That is the concentration that the British had also done. That is what they had also done. They created an Indian elite which would serve them. See, they never hindered the Indian elite that was under their patronage growing, because they knew that these people will serve us. Fortunately for us, from that small group, there were a bunch of nationalists who also supported the freedom movement and ensured that that goal was achieved. But that's exactly what the British were doing. And that's what we have also been doing. Look at how the power brokers hold sway in independent India today. Look at how the government actively is promoting monopolies, whether it's in media, whether it is in manufacturing. Now they want to create the same thing in agriculture, where maybe the land holdings will still remain with the people who hold the land. But for all other this aspects of the agricultural activity, they will be like employees of big corporates. This whole fancy term about contract farming is like, finally you become an employee of that corporate, you are at their mercy.
But Tushar, Gandhi's own relationships with leading industrialists are well known. I mean, the Bajajs, for example, or the Birlas, Gandhi often stayed at their palatial properties, and when he was shot, he was at Birla House. So, how do you explain the dichotomy?
I'll give you an example of two things. Ghanshyam Das Birla was a very dear friend of Bapu. In one of his premier jute mills in Kolkata, there was a labor dispute. At that time, there was a strike going on. At that point of time, he was visiting Kolkata. He was staying at Ghanshyam Das ji's house. And the labor union leaders came to meet him and said, don't stay over here. We are fighting for our rights. He is exploiting us. And you must not identify with him. Bapu said, look, my friend is the individual Ghanshyam Das Birla. He's not. And he listened to the labor union leaders. And he understood the problem. Then over dinner he told Ghanshyam Das ji, you're wrong. You better correct this. The laborers are in the right. and you will have to correct it. Otherwise, you will see me standing with them. And he resolved the labor issue with the Bajajes. The founder went, he was a serial entrepreneur and he was setting up industry after industry after industry. And he went, he wanted Bapu to launch his new project. And Bapu said, now you've got enough. You don't need any more. Stop. So although he was close to them, although he accepted their hospitality and things, but he laid down the rules also. He said, look, don't be greedy. And if you're doing injustice, I may be your friend. I'll remain your friend. But I will insist that you amend the thing. So it wasn't like today, what we see today, where once you are in a pocket, you also find it convenient to remain over there, and you're not bothered about the fact that people know that you are in somebody's pocket.
Today, I think it's fair to say that the RSS is the most influential organization in the country. And Patel himself had banned it for all the praise that he is receiving from them now. But Patel had banned it. And what was Patel's view of the RSS? And also, what was Gandhi's view of it?
They all realized the danger that RSS was. Patel, after Bapu's assassination, wrote about how he thought RSS was the danger. And that is where his ministry banned the RSS. And it was Pandit Nehru, who was a true Democrat, who said, no, we can't do such an arbitrary thing. They also have a right to exist. We can oppose them ideologically, but we cannot use power to, deny them their liberty. And that's where 2 years later the ban was rescinded on it. Neither of the action was an endorsement. Patel's action was, Pandit Nehru, Modi can shout from the rooftops that India would have been different if Patel had been the Prime Minister of India. And I agree with him. I absolutely agree, because if Patel was the Prime Minister of India post Bapu's murder, he would have annihilated the RSS. He would have erased them from the face of India, because he was that way. He would have gone after them. The RSS should thank their stars that a liberal, truly liberal person like Jawaharlal Nehru was at the helm of the government, who believed in being just with everybody. And thanks to him that they survived. So, maybe next time from the Red Fort, like this time, the PM praised the RSS. He should express his gratitude to Nehru that he didn't eradicate the RSS. You asked me about Bapu and his thing. Bapu had gone. The RSS claims that, Bapu came to our Shaka and he talked. He went to one of the meetings of one of the Shakas when in the final stage, after 46, Bapu started, when he went to Delhi, he used to live at that time it was called the Bhangi colony. Now it's called the Harijan colony. So he used to live over there. And it was in the courtyard of a temple that he camped. And just behind the temple was a large open space where RSS Shaka would assemble to do their kawayat, as they called, the weapons training and all that used to take place over there. And the cadre would march, do the drill and all that over there. And so they would come and say, come and visit us, because he was critical of the radicals and how Indian society was in danger from the radicalized Hindus of that time. And so they kept saying, no, we're not that way. You come and see, we're just a social work, social organization and things. He did go. But even from their dais, he told them to change their ways. He said, yes, you can be a great asset for the country, but this ideology that you espouse is dangerous and harmful to this nation. Unless you adopt the ideology of acceptance and unity, our nation cannot survive or thrive. And so he was critical of them. There was another incident when he sent Sushila Nayyar to one of the refugee transit camps, which was in the western Punjab, but very close to the border, where a lot of Hindu and Sikh refugees fleeing from the partition riots had taken refuge, waiting to be escorted across the border. And they were continuously being harassed by the Muslim hordes who had been chasing them with the objective of looting uh, the refugees. And Bapu had sent Sushila Nayyar to that camp saying that you go and ensure the safety and the comfort of the refugees, that everything that they require is provided for them. And Sushila Nayyar went and stayed over there. And she came back. And in her report, she told Bapu that, Bapu, amongst the refugees, the RSS volunteers are doing a marvelous job. And she said, you must praise them, which you see even today. When there is a calamity and things, they reach over there and they do the work. But what Bapu told her at that time is very true today also. He told her that, look, don't get fooled by this. They may be doing a good deed, but there is an evil intent behind it, because they are trying to, even there, they're working to strengthen their ideology of divisiveness. And you look at instances from recent calamities where RSS has gone and set up relief stations, and their volunteers have worked amongst the affected to provide relief and all that. But now they will ask people to say Jai Shri Ram and things like that, where they are there. They want to identify with their radical agenda, and they want to win support from the people who subscribe to that exclusivist ideology. And Bapu realized that. And he said that danger to our society is far greater than any benefit that their dedication to service can achieve. And so it is a danger we must be aware of and fight against. This was what he believed. On many occasions in the last phase of his life, he used to write to the senior Hindu Mahasabha and RSS leaders and say this talk of violence, this propaganda of hate is damaging our country. Please ask your people to stop. Today, the same thing is being done. So, look at what hate speech is doing. And hate speech today has become the weapon of the right wing in their quest for power. You look at election speeches, campaign speeches, full of venom, full of hate. The incident on the train from Jaipur to Bombay, where the Railway Protection Force policemen selected Muslims and shot them dead, and quoted national leaders as his inspiration. And the outbreak of lynchings all across. You can link them to the rise of hate speech and the normalization of hate. And that is what Bapu warned against, and believed that the ideology of the Hindutva brigade was dangerous. Their exterior of service and compassion and all that was just a show. And that is exactly what he believed about the RSS.
And there's hate, of course, which you've talked about, but also, I think, a lack of decency, a rise in abuse. And while we know of the abuse being directed at minorities and so on, but specifically against Gandhi, you're finding a great amount of abuse now,
Yes.
which is becoming common. In fact, to the extent that even his parentage has been questioned.
Yeah. Before I come to that, I just want the previous question I want to add. The RSS chief, just day before yesterday, in his speech, appealed to the Muslims to hand over the mosques at Mathura and which is the third, Kashi, Varanasi. He said, hand them over, then we'll stop, because those are legitimate demands.
Did he say that?
Yeah, it's reported in the press. His appeal to the Muslims that for national interests, we'll do that. And yet, his own people, his affiliate organizations of Bajrang Dal and VHP, are digging out shivlings in masjids and dargahs all over the country, even in Maharashtra. They keep doing that. He's mum on that. But uh, his signal is that if the Muslims don't do hand over these two places willingly, then it's open season on all their places of worship. Hate in all its form is dangerous to the survival and existence of our nation, which is multi religious. And no matter what you do, it cannot be turned into a one religion state or a theocratic state.
But let's address the question that I asked, which
Yeah.
is the abuse of Bapu and the questioning of his parentage also.
Yeah, there's no hold. There's no hold bar. Finally, even after getting him murdered, Gandhi, the thought, challenges them. And so they have to build a sufficient brainwashed population which will accept the fact that Gandhi was not a saint, not even a human being, but a demon. And that is what they've been achieving so far. And that's where you see that from intellectual criticism of his actions and policies, they have now come down to the level of personal abuse and and gali galoch, as we call it in Hindi, which is more appropriate, a term. In English, the term doesn't really convey what they're doing. It's filthy abused, where his mother's character is being questioned, aspersions on his parentage are being posted. You see, the mistake that Bapu did was being too transparent. And that is where everything that he did is in the public domain. And in a time when things are taken out of context and twisted to serve their own purpose, that is so much cannon fodder readily available, like his brahmacharya experiments. It's so easy that because he talked about his brahmacharya experiments, every female associate that he had is open to the allegation that he was sleeping with them, that women were only there for him to exploit. Whereas all the proven pedophiles and sex maniacs are from the Hindutva brigade. Even in the courts, who have been convicted and things, are icons of the Hindutva brigade, all the rapist babas that are languishing in jail and who are freely given parole by the Bharatiya Janata Party government, are the ones who are the real sex fiends and pedophiles. But if you go on social media, you will feel that India only had one sexual deviant and pedophile who was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. That is what they are doing ever since Godse shot Bapu on 30th January 1948. Because the thought scares them more than the human being ever scared them.
With this, we come to the end of the All Indians Matter in depth special. How would Gandhi have viewed the India of today? Tushar, thanks so much for being a guide on the show again.
Thanks, Ashraf. It was a pleasure, as usual, to do this annual ritual.
If you liked what you heard, please follow this podcast and share this episode with your friends and family. Please visit allindiansmatter.in for more columns and audio podcasts. You can follow me on X at Ashraf Engineer and All Indians Count. On Facebook, search for the All Indians Matter page, and on Instagram, the handle is All Indians Matter. Email me at editor@allindiansmatter.in. Catch you again soon.